Welcome to the Free Birth Podcast, a supportive space for people who are learning, exploring, and celebrating their autonomous choices in childbirth. Together, we'll unpack truths, share personal stories, and claim our ability to birth freely and intuitively. Here's your host, Emily Zsudayka.
Hey everyone, it's Emily and Yolanda.
Hey!
We want to tell you about our amazing new course because we just launched our pre-sale.
That's right. I'm Yolanda, the director of the Free Birth Society School, and I'm thrilled to tell you about the very first course we're offering, Free Birth Society's Complete Guide to Free Birth. If you're interested in birthing outside the system, but you don't know where to start, or you're encountering resistance or fear in your own mind or in your community, or even if you just want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, this course is for you.
Free Birth Society's Complete Guide to Free Birth really is incredibly comprehensive. We cover everything from how to talk to friends and family, how to navigate your choices with a nervous partner, how to get a birth certificate, what prenatal care could look like when no one else is managing you, how to identify real complications and emergencies, and let's get real, we go deep into unlearning the myths about birth in our culture using evidence-based information to relearn what normal birth is and how to prepare for it.
Our intention is for every course participant to emerge with the tools to approach their free birth with confidence and the knowledge to discern what safe physiological birth looks like, and in possession of the power to manifest the birth of your dreams.
What's also really cool is that we offer long-term support, live group coaching, options for one-on-one coaching, and you will get lifetime access to the course material.
We even have quizzes and worksheets, meditations, hypno-affirmation tracks, and all sorts of unique and helpful custom-tailored birth prep for your free birth.
This course is for the woman who wants to birth in power on her own terms. We have created this course especially for you because you're standing in the very place Yolanda and I both were when we recognized that hospital birth or any form of birth in captivity just wasn't our path.
So head over to our gorgeous new website, freebirthsociety.com, to learn more and to sign up for the course that will quite literally change your life.
Today we have Zsudayka from DC. After being abused in the system in her first birth, Zsudayka knew in her next pregnancy she would not return to the hospital. She tells us what it was like to navigate a nervous partner and how she made a compromise to receive obstetrical prenatal care for her partner's comfort with her second pregnancy. She describes her experience of being a Black pregnant woman in America and speaks to the systemic racism in healthcare. Then, of course, Zsudayka shares her gorgeous free birth story. And lastly, she tells us about her current pregnancy, in which Zsudayka has enjoyed doing completely on her own.
I am originally from Denver, which, is kind of an open-minded, hippie-ish town. And so growing up, my vision of birth was always, I always pictured myself like digging a hole in the backyard and like squatting and having a baby, like going in the house,
Awesome.
Like, oh, there's my baby, which of course everybody was like, that's crazy. So when I got pregnant with my first child, I had no concept of what actually went into a home birth. Mm-hmm. And I chose a hospital with a midwife program thinking that I was going to get a natural home birth experience, but like in a hospital setting. So I would have like the safety of the medical.
Right, the best of both worlds.
Yes, yes, except that's not what certified nurse midwives do at all. And it was a very rude awakening for me. I think the process of getting ready to give birth, I've always been the type of person who really I want to research everything. And I didn't really know what resources to go to, because especially at that time, there were no, this was like 10 years ago, and there were no like natural mama apps. There were no, I didn't know at that time of any websites or anything like that that gave information about, how to give birth if you want to really be in control of it. It was, baby center and what to expect and, your week by week development, which was great information. And, it's fun to be like, oh, your baby's the size of a pea. You should eat this. You should eat that. But I had really bad hyperemesis with my baby. And, so I started out where I was in and out of the hospital getting IV fluids just to try to sustain. And, I expected to have this like beautiful pregnancy process, and I was going to glow, and I was taking walks, and I was going to, gain my 30 pounds and have this all-belly pregnancy, and I was vegan going into the pregnancy, so I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to maintain this, and it's going to be awesome. And instead, I swole up really bad. I gained like 70 pounds. I couldn't eat anything but like McDonald's and Totino's 99-cent pizzas were like the only things I could hold down for about 6 months, and it was awful, and it just kind of rocked me out of my center. So then I ended up, when I got to the point where I was going into labor, my instincts, I knew that I was going into labor. Me and the midwives argued the whole time about how far along I was. And so that was probably one of my first clues that, this is not the process that I want to have. It was very much like, oh, everybody fits into this 40-week chart. And I was like, well, I have 22-day cycles. So, they had a date that they said, this is the day your baby's coming. And I said, no, my baby's coming this day. And it was one of those things where I had dreamed my daughter before. So I knew I was having a girl. And I knew, I'm having her on July 26th. I don't know why. I knew the exact date. And they were like, no, that's too early for you to have her. You need to wait 2 more weeks. And I was like, I'm having her. So, of course, July 25th, I'm leaking fluid, and I go in, and they're like, no, you're fine. We want you to wait another 2 weeks, go back home.
Whoa.
And I go back home, and I start having contractions later that evening. I'm having a lot of back pain, and my instinct is, get on your hands and knees. I had never heard of spinning babies. Nobody had ever mentioned that to me. The midwives had never mentioned that to me. They never talked to me about, exercises or baby positioning, anything like that. But my instinct was like, stay on your hands and knees. So I spent most of the night on and off hands and knees. And then my contractions got closer together, and I ended up going back to the hospital. And again, they did an ultrasound. They said, oh, your fluid's kind of low. I know you said you were leaking fluid yesterday, but we still don't want you to have this baby, so we're going to stop your labor and send you back home. Which, as educated as I am now about it, stopping somebody's labor at 38 weeks is ridiculous. So, they gave me a shot and sent me home, and it did not stop my labor. And then I ended up going back to the hospital where they accidentally ruptured my membranes doing repeated, cervical checks. So, everything, just the whole time as things were happening, as all these interventions, my spirit was just like, this is not right. This is not what's supposed to be happening. They were like, you're not dilating. And I was just like, I'm not. They had me strapped to the bed because they said that the baby's heartbeat was decelerating. And
the whole shebang.
Yes, like things that you find out later are perfectly normal. And
finding out later that being strapped to the bed and all this intervention is not normal.
Exactly. And it's not helpful.
Right.
And, I had every textbook sign that the baby wasn't in the right position. And so rather than, and everything in me, I kept telling them, I really need to get on my hands and knees. I really feel like I just need to crawl. I really feel like, and was not allowed to. and ended up having, they gave me morphine because I refused the epidural, and then it just got to a point where they're like, well, you're dilating so slow, like I had been in labor for 24 hours at this point, in hard labor, and they were just like, oh, well, you have to go ahead and get the epidural because you need to get through the night. You're not going to be able to push till the morning. So I ended up having to consent to an epidural that I didn't want. I just felt really powerless. And then, the next morning comes, and I'm ready to, I'm like, okay, it's time for me to push. Like, I could feel that it's time for me to push. And they were like, no, the midwife's not here yet. They don't like it when a nurse delivers babies. So, just hold it in.
Oh, no.
And it's just like, you can't hold a baby.
It's like first of all, it's way worse than this, but when I try to make people understand this, I say it's like right when you're throwing up, but you're already throwing up, someone tells you don't throw up. It's right. You can't do it. And so it's physically and emotionally painful.
It's very physically and emotionally painful. And, I have no concept of like fetal ejection reflex or anything like that. So, I'm like literally trying to keep my knees together to like hold this baby in.
Oh my gosh.
And finally just got to a point where I was like, I'm pushing. I don't know what y'all are doing, but like, here comes the baby. It's happening right now. So, I have my daughter. She has an infection. I have an infection because of all of the delays that they have put into place. I really, I knew a little bit about placentas, and I really wanted to see the placenta. My placenta was in pieces. It was black. It was all. It was awful. It was.
Why do you think it was black?
She had been without any. I didn't have any fluid. Like, I had been leaking for days. And so she had been without any fluid at all, and so everything was infected.
Whoa. So you had an infection.
Yes. And I think from the way that they ruptured my membranes, because I probably had 12 to 15 cervical checks within a couple of hours. Like, just person after person after person coming to see, like, oh, you're not dilated.
This is everything. This is the most, like, cliche hospital birth, classic, like, common story, and it never ceases to fascinate me that this is what women are going through, and they're leaving thinking, well, not you, thank God, but most women are leaving thinking that was a normal birth.
Yes. And, for me, I was livid, because I was just like, this is not the experience I wanted to have. My daughter was born face up because the position they kept me in, she just never turned. I tore a little bit because of the way that she was born and because of the position that they had me in when she was born. I was livid. And afterwards, they had the staff come in and apologize to me. And, it was very much, they were just like, we're sorry, we didn't really listen to what you were saying you felt, and we didn't really listen to, what you were saying you were going through, because they had a picture of how my birth was going to go that had nothing to do with me.
Well, yeah.
And had nothing to do with, like, what my body was going through or anything like that. And it was one of the first times for me that I really connected to the fact that, like, you guys treated me like a welfare mom because that's what you assumed I was. You assumed that I came in here, that I didn't have any concept of, like, my body, of myself, that I didn't have any autonomy over how I wanted to conduct this birth. You assumed that it wasn't going to be a big deal.
And let me just add that they also treat rich white women like this.
Yes.
Of course, we obviously know that women of color are treated far, far worse in the system and all of that. Yes. And that's what's like, wow, like this is how they treat all women. All women are treated like they don't know their bodies. They don't know what the F they want. This is what's it called? An assembly line, like factory farming. And no one listens to women.
Very much. And I was very clear that if I hadn't been ready to push, and if after I gave birth, because, I was the problem, mom afterwards, like, they had to take the baby immediately because, she needed antibiotics, I needed antibiotics, and, I freaked out. And, I wouldn't let them take the baby after that. insisted on co-sleeping at the hospital. Like, I freaked out.
Wow.
And, I think that because I freaked out, and then I refused to stay at the hospital. So they were like, well, you have to stay at least overnight this next day because, your daughter had a fever. And so they were like, we need to make sure her fever comes down. But I was like, I'm leaving in the morning. I'm done. And I don't know what y'all are going to do. I don't, bring me whatever paperwork I need to sign. This is done. We're done. I'm not dealing with y'all anymore. And I think at that point, they kind of realized, like, okay, well, this is a person who's educated enough about herself and her body that she's going to be a problem. So let's apologize and, try to smooth it over. But it was very clear that if I hadn't been so adamant, if I hadn't been ready to push, I'm sure that they would have pushed the C-section.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that if I hadn't been such a problem afterwards, that there would have been no apology or anything like that.
Well, and sometimes it goes the opposite way, where the more you push and the more you decline and the more you dissent, the more punished you are. So it sounds like, thankfully, at least it slightly went in the direction of you were able to kind of alpha the situation, and they wound up being somewhat apologetic. A day late and $1 short.
Yes, it was definitely a day late and $1 short. And some of it, my mom was there. She was a super advocate for me, and I had my birth plan was really thoroughly. We were the type, we showed up with printed out birth plans. We put them on the walls, and we were probably annoying from jump.
Well, and you were, and the long and short of it is you were in the wrong environment, all 100%. Of that. Like, if anyone listening is doing the same thing where they have a really thorough birth plan and they're going to put them up all over the room and all this stuff, then don't go. Don't go. It's the wrong place to do that because no one cares.
They don't, and they're not interested in it. And the nurses found it very annoying, and we're very open about the fact that they found it annoying.
Oh, my God.
And we're very open about the fact that my self-advocacy was annoying to them. It was a problem for them. And so from that point, when I went to my follow-up checkup and some of the things that they said, I was just like, I was right the whole time. Just everything they said, I was like, I was right the whole time. And as I started to really research, well, why does my baby not get into position? And then all of a sudden, here's this spinning baby's information. I'm like, oh, hands and knees turns the baby around. Huh. Imagine that. And nobody had ever said that to me. And so I was just like, there's an instinctual part of us as women that just knows what to do.
Hell yeah.
And I feel like I got robbed of the ability to make those decisions for myself. And I said, never again.
I'm so sorry.
I'm not having another baby like this.
Yeah.
And I had afterwards, because my daughter, I noticed in her personality, especially even to this day, she needs a lot more support. And I feel like, those first couple of days, especially for a new baby, are very traumatic. You're in the warmth of the womb, and then all of a sudden the womb pushes you out, and it's bright lights, and all these people are passing you around, and, all these other things are going on. She comes out, and she's sick, and, it was very traumatic. I feel like she didn't have what she deserved in terms of needing to be, she didn't get to do the breast crawl. She didn't get to do immediate chest to chest. She didn't get to do, they tossed her under some warning lights to try to help. And it was everything for both of us that it did not need to be. And I felt like, when you bring a baby into the world, it should be a sacred process. And it should be something where, especially afterwards, because Mom, we're riding the euphoria. So afterwards, my focus should have been able to make sure that she was comfortable and that she felt safe and that she felt protected. And, I wanted her to be able to grow up and have always that base within herself that, I was always safe. I was always protected. I was always comfortable. And I feel like that was always a little rocky with my oldest child.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So it became a big deal for me after I had her. I was like, I'm not having another baby unless I can have this baby at home and have the baby the way that I want to have the baby. So probably, it's 6 years later, my husband and I got married. And, and I had told him from day one, like, I'm going to have a home birth. And he was just like, yeah, whatever, that's kind of crazy. I had moved to D.C. by then. And D.C. is a very medical type of city. So, I was very adamant about the fact this is the way I want to have this baby. So we get pregnant. And, we're calling around, talking to different midwives, and run into a couple of things, which is one, that in D.C., midwives are not covered by your insurance. Mm-hmm. So everything comes out of pocket. And, people are giving us quotes from anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000. Mm-hmm. And, it's just like, we just got married. I was one of the people that got pregnant wedding night.
Oh, my gosh.
It's such a beautiful, beautiful moment. But, we hadn't established where we had, we didn't have, like, savings and things like that put aside, to contemplate how we were going to have our babies.
Sure.
We knew we wanted to have babies. But, I thought it was going to be like months. It takes women a long time to get pregnant. Mm-hmm. So, I'm thinking, like, we'll get married. I'll go to the doctor and just find out if everything is still working okay, and just, like, go from there. And it's like we get married and I'm, boom, pregnant. So we're calling, we're interviewing midwives, trying to figure out, what we're going to do. My husband was very uncomfortable with the idea of home birth. And, it's his first child. It was his first child. And, so we went back and forth for a little while and had a couple of moments that were really hard because, I had to understand that it was his first child and that it's fair for him to be worried. And it's
Sure.
fair for him to want his child to be born safely and taken care of. And, and for me, a lot of times when you see birth, his experience of birth was like, Grey's Anatomy. Mm-hmm. I'm bleeding out, and here comes my uterus. It's on the table. And
Well, and that's the whole, right, that's the whole lie, right, is that men are, well, women are too, but you already woke up to the truth, and that he has been conditioned to believe the safest place is to be in an emergency oriented environment, because birth is an emergency, and he doesn't want you guys to die. Like, it's like a 1 + 1 = 2, but then it creates all this, hopefully for most couples, it winds up being an ascension, and a real new level of truth, trust, and integrity, because this happens all the time where the woman's like, no, I need to be at home. And I hear about this all the time.
Yeah. And then it's hard to have dialogue. That's one of the first things I noticed is that, in a lot of the birth groups, I joined a bunch of home birth groups. And you would have women who would post, I want to have a home birth, my husband's not okay with it. And you would get 50 comments that are like, who cares what he said? It's your body, it's your baby. And, on one hand, yes, it's my body, it's my baby. I'm the one who's giving birth. But on the other hand, I do want to respect his concern. And I do want to address, what his concerns are.
Well, and that's where, yes, totally. And I think there's a way to respect and address and still hold this line, this is happening, and let's spend the whole pregnancy, exploring and you can take charge of educating yourself. But I think what gets tricky, and where I was probably one of those people that said, who cares? It's your choice, but I think what gets tricky for me is to respect his feelings or his involvement when it's based on conditioning and lies. That's where it gets a little tricky for me. It's not real information. It's somebody who has been brainwashed to not trust women and to not trust women's bodies. And this is not unique to him. This is literally everybody, and so it creates a lot of tension. And like I said, hopefully for most people, it's a real, as it obviously was for you, and we're going to get to, because you did wind up free birthing. Well, anyway, I guess go back to the story. You could say how it went.
Yes, well, that was definitely a concern of mine, because I was like, I am not emotionally or physically capable of going back to the hospital for birth. And that was one of the, like, hardest realizations for me, was that, like, as much as I really want to, like, respect and, like, yeah, this is your first baby and I want you to have a wonderful experience too, I cannot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to, there's no way. I just,
And you already saw,
no.
you had firsthand, I want to say experience, but really it was trauma of what happens there.
Yes, it was so much trauma, and it was so much, and, you know, there was a lot of, I didn't really have a lot of language around exactly how traumatic it was until I was already pregnant again. And, you know, so as soon as I feel like I just kind of shut that part off. I was like, this was awful, and I have to move on. And, you know, and I moved on until I was pregnant again, and it was like, oh, so are you going to do this again? And how are you going to do this again so it doesn't turn out this way? And I was just like, I just cannot. And there is no, you know, and having to sit him down and be like, listen, it's not going to happen. There's just no way that I'm going to go to the hospital. It's not up for discussion. What is up for discussion is, like, let me know your concerns and we'll address them. And, you know, he made a list of things that he was concerned about. And, you know, we went through and we researched each and every one of his concerns and, you know, tried to make sure that he had as much information as possible. And that's where I got introduced to people like Ina May. You know, the idea of birthing without fear, the idea of, you know, everybody always says start out with, what's that Ricky Lake documentary?
Yeah, Business of Being Born.
Yes, The Business of Being Born. And so, you know, we watched that. My husband was unmoved by The Business of Being Born. He was like, this is interesting, and kind of side-eyed me like,
well, and
okay, well, thanks.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that, you know, it's what I'm hearing you say is that your husband was ultimately open-minded and willing to learn. And that breeds an environment where ultimately it is your choice, and it's about getting him, it's about his own relationship to it and figuring out how to come to terms with, you know, with what's going to happen, versus what I hear all damn day, every day on Facebook and emails and everything is, how do I get my partner on board with my decision or with my hope or with my dream to free birth? And when somebody says, how do I get my boyfriend on board with the idea of home birth, frankly, what they're saying is, I need his permission. It's not going to happen unless my man supports me. And when you approach anything like that, if you're asking permission from the world to do something with your own body, you've already lost. You know, and then I don't say that lightly, because it's not easy. It's not easy, and we are trained to ask permission from our men, from our elders, from our doctors. We're women, you know, we're supposed to be submissive. And so, you know, I just want to give your partner credit where it's due. That what I'm hearing in your story is that it was about his, you know, openness and willingness to honor your decision, even in his discomfort, which, you know, that's a good man.
I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky. Yeah,
I get that. We should only be with men like that. We shouldn't tolerate anything less.
Yes, because I've seen stories of women who had to battle, you know, the whole pregnancy, and he and I we came to an agreement, and the agreement was that I would get, quote unquote, traditional prenatal care from a hospital of his choice. As long as, you know, throughout the pregnancy, they said everything was progressing normally, then I could have the birth however I wanted to have the birth. And he asked that I have a really good, like, just in case something goes wrong, plan. And I felt like that was fair. You know, and especially for his first child, because there is some information that I think that you can come across from sitting down with a quote unquote medical professional. And so we agreed to he picked the hospital, and we went and did prenatal visits. And I think that one of the things that really helped was, like, I was studying, and I'm sending him, you know, links and articles and videos, and we're watching all these birth videos and whatnot. But, you know, when we're going to the appointments, the doctors are saying the same things I'm saying and less because, you know, they're not really that concerned about, you know, they want you to take the test. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so when you go in and you start saying, well, I'm not going to take this test. I'm not interested in this. Like, this is what's going on with my body. This is what's going on with my baby. I'm clear about it. You know, they're like, oh, you know, here's your prescription prenatal. And I'm like, well, what's in this? You know, because it doesn't say on the sheet what's in it. And, you know, it's just the typical prenatal. Okay, well, is this folic acid or folate? Like, what's happening here? And the doctor's, oh, okay, well, you know, it's folic acid. I don't want that. I want,
They're like,
you know,
we're not used to women having. Yeah.
Not at all, you know, and they're, oh, we're going to do this ultrasound and this ultrasound. I don't want that. And it was a very interesting experience. I think, you know, going in, one of the first things that I think that he got to see was I had told him, I said, you know, they treat women like an assembly line, and like every woman is you know, doesn't want to have babies, is not empowered by her decision to have babies. Like every pregnancy is an accident, and watch how they talk to me. And we went in, and it was very much, you know, oh, you know, are you guys on welfare? You know, well, you need to get all these, you need a vaginal exam so that we can do these STD tests because your husband probably cheats on you. And it was just like, who are you talking to? I'm grown. I'm in my 30s. I am old enough to make a decision to have a child. I'm employed. I'm educated. You know, and not to
that
say
is
that
so
those things make me more
racist.
qualified, but just like, why is this conversation happening? And then these are conversations that I'm having with other Black doctors. So it was like very clear that this is just ingrained in how the whole system works. It's like when you come in, you are this person until you bust out of whatever box they have already put you in. I mean, like I think the first 6 appointments we went to, they sent a social worker to talk to us about whether we wanted services, and we had to keep being like, we don't qualify for services.
Wow.
We do not qualify for services. We both work. We are both college educated. We are both like, what? Don't come back here for this. You know, the vaginal exam, they came in, I refused. They brought another doctor in. I refused again, and they brought the head of the whole department in to come and give me a speech about why this is necessary. And I was just like, no, you know, I have statistics about false positives from these tests, and you can do all of this stuff from blood and urine. You do not need to do a vaginal exam.
Did you ever call them out for it being just like point blank systemic racism?
Yes. On our 3rd appointment, when they brought the head of staff in, I went completely off. I had a list of issues with how they spoke to me and how they addressed me, and was very much like, and, you know, even though I'm coming from a place of, you know, of education and not of poverty, like the fact that you treat anybody that walks through this door this way is problematic.
Of course.
Even if a woman needs services, she will communicate to you that she needs services.
Right.
And there's, you know, I filled out y'all's patient intake form, and, you know, it talks about employment and marriage and things like that. I don't even, like, if you guys looked at my basic paperwork, I don't even seem like I would need any services. So, you know, I just don't. And so, you know, saying that to them, like, it's a problem that you guys engage anybody this way. And it's not empowering. It's not, even if I came in here and I needed all the help in the world, I feel bad for even having to ask because of the way that you guys are talking to me and because of the way that you're treating me. And babies are not accidents. Like, I planned this baby. We talked about this baby. This is something that we both wanted and that we both put the work in for. You know, it's not okay to treat women when they come in and they're pregnant like this is some accident that just happened and, you know, maybe you'll abort. Like, those type of conversations were just so casual. It's like, well, are you sure? Well, you know, you have until this long to decide. And it was just like, why are I didn't come in here and communicate to you that I was unsure.
Wow.
I didn't come in here and communicate to you that I needed time to decide or anything like that. I came in here to get my proof of pregnancy form, print out my paperwork, and I'm about to go because this is ridiculous. And so I think that it really helped, though, him watching me have to kind of go through that a little bit.
So was he there
And
when you did your whole speech?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. So I went to my first 2 appointments.
And you're like,
by myself.
see why I don't want to freaking be here? Like, come on.
Yes, and he's sitting and he's kind of looking at them like, are you guys serious? Like, what is this whole approach? What is this?
It's called oppression. It's called wanting, it's called misogyny, it's called sexism, it's called racism, it's called you're not actually safe there.
Not at all. And it brings light to, in America especially, we just have an anti-baby culture that is very strange. And it's very, like when somebody comes in and says, like, I'm pregnant and, I'm here to get my test, like there was it was not a celebratory event at all. It was very much like, oh God, are you sure you're going to get fat? And,
wow.
And it was just, I was like, I'm so excited. I'm bringing forth a life. And this is a very special thing that I'm only going to be able to do a limited amount of times for a limited amount of years. This is amazing for me.
Of course.
And I want it to feel amazing. I don't want it to feel like a burden, that I've decided to become a breeder. Like, I don't understand those aspects of our culture. And I felt, in all of the hospital settings that I've been in, that's been one thing that's been reoccurring, is that it has not been a celebratory type of thing. It's always a, are you sure? And I don't want to feel that way. So we went to most of the appointments up until 30 to 32 weeks. But, throughout the process, I was educating my husband a lot, like we had the glucose test, and I was like, I'm not interested in that. We had the test they do for Down syndrome and all of that. And I was like, if we have a baby with Down syndrome, we're going to figure out how to love this baby with Down syndrome. Like, there's nothing no test that you guys are going to run that's going to make me not have this baby. So, I'm not interested.
Well, and then that test becomes truly unnecessary. It's the same thing with ultrasounds. Like, so many people say for peace of mind. And it's interesting because if somebody gets a 20-week ultrasound and they don't like what they see, well, then are they going to terminate? Because why else get it if you're not going to, if you're going to roll with whatever, the universe has given you, then there's really
What's the point?
Yeah. Plus, of course, I have to insert that ultrasounds are notoriously inaccurate, but go ahead.
Very much. And I said that as well. So that's the only ultrasound we had was the 20-week ultrasound, and they required that because we refused all other testing. And we're like, we just want to do these measurements, peace of mind, peace of mind, pease of mind.
And there's no such thing as required, right? Like legally.
Right. And as you're going through the process, you're just like, whatever, fine, we'll do this ultrasound, it'll be cool for my husband. He can find out if it's a boy or a girl. But at the end of the day, there's not anything that y'all are going to say that, is going to make me change or shift or anything. And I just feel like as a woman, as a mom, like we're in tune with the babies. Like if something isn't right, I just feel like I would know.
Totally.
I feel like that intuition would kind of kick in that I need to check or I need to, and I just felt like I would know.
Yeah. And that's you ultimately choosing yourself over technology, which is what, free birth is all about.
If you're interested in birthing outside the system, but you don't know where to start, or you're encountering resistance or fear in your own mind or in your community, or even if you just want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, our new free birth course is for you. Free Birth Society's complete guide to free birth really is incredibly comprehensive. We cover everything you should know about free birth. Our intention is for every course participant to emerge with the tools to approach your free birth with confidence and the knowledge to discern what safe physiological birth looks like, and in possession of the power to manifest the birth of your dreams. Find out more at our website at freebirthsociety.com.
So we stopped going to appointments probably at about 30 weeks and just, went free from there, which was the most beautiful experience ever. Just not having to deal with all of that and having an opportunity to really just be in tune with my body and with the baby and just rest. And it actually turned out really good for us because my son was 2 weeks late, according to the charts and whatnot. I don't believe in late babies.
Right.
Babies
That's
come when
not
they
a thing.
come. But I had him at 41 weeks and 5 days, and it was one of those things where I know that had I continued to go to the prenatal appointments, that they would have pushed for an induction.
Of course.
And I could feel that he wasn't ready. As miserable as I was, I could feel like he's just not ready. Like my spirit was like, he's not ready yet. We're not drinking castor oil.
Right.
We're not doing,
well,
he's just not ready yet.
Yeah, nobody can argue if they're doing any sort of induction, castor oil or whatever. The fact of the matter is, if you're not in labor, your baby ain't ready. Like it's not ready. That's literally how nature works. So if your baby is cooked and ready, then you will be in labor. It's that simple.
And learning about, those last couple of weeks of development as well,
right.
Really understanding what lung development is happening, what brain development is happening, and just, he's not ready. And we're going to let him bake until it's time for him to bake. And, of course, there's pressure all around because everybody is so, people schedule their inductions these days. And so, everybody's, well, when are you going to go back to the hospital? When are you going to, just being like, leave me alone. Like, when he's ready to come, he's going to come. And, so my husband, he had taken leave. He took all these days off, and, his leave was over. He gets up in the morning to return to work, and I wake up with him and like, hey, I'm in labor today. Right now, of all days, here we are. And we proceed to have what I would consider one of the most beautiful labor ever. It was so amazing. Now this labor, I'm just like, oh, I hope it's equal. We had a water birth. We got the kiddie pool off of Amazon, and I was in labor for, I want to say, about 4 hours. So it was a quick birth. I had a lot of prodromal labor prior to that. So, I think baby was just primed and ready to go. But it was beautiful because, for one, as a partner, he really respected my wishes in terms of I, in labor, do not want anybody talking to me. Nice. I don't want you asking me a lot of questions. I don't want, I didn't do cervical checks. I didn't check dilation. I didn't do, I couldn't find a lot of information about Black women in the purple line. And how does purple line show up on darker skin people.
I thought that,
really find.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that because I've had that same thought.
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I literally could not find any birth stories, and and there might be one out there that I just wasn't able to find. I could not find anything about Black women in the purple line.
We should ask in the Facebook group.
Yes, we should.
Yeah, just to see their experience.
To see if anybody could find it, because I couldn't find anything. So I was, it made me be like, well, I'm just not going to worry about it.
Sure.
And when it's time, it'll be time, and hopefully I'll just know. So we did. I had a little playlist, and I put my playlist on, and we filled up the bathtub, and my husband and my younger brother, they filled up the pool, and he just left me to myself, and he would come in every now and again and be like, you need anything, and I would, I need some more water, and he'd go fill up my water bottle and come back, and you need anything? No, I'm good, and he would go back in the other room. And so, funny enough, he noticed that I was in transition before I noticed that I was in transition, because I was just in such a zone, I was in and out of the bathtub, just and rocking and walking around, and I had my list of songs I was singing, and then I ended up on the, I was like, oh, I'm going to sit on the toilet. This is going to be my place. And, so he comes in the bathroom and kind of looks at me and is like, you need to get in the pool. you're pushing, like the baby's coming.
Wow.
And I'm just looking at him, and I was literally thinking to myself, like, I wonder when it'll be time to push. And he's like, bruh, you're pushing right now. Like, come on.
Oh my gosh.
So he like drags me off the toilet into the pool, and I get into the pool, and literally 2 pushes later, here's baby.
Oh my
So
God.
I'm like in the pool, like crouched down in the water, and here comes the head. And then we have like this moment, where you have about a minute between the next contraction, and it's just like we're reaching down, you can feel the baby's head in the water, he's like in tears, just like, oh my God, and and a bit here, the next push, the baby just shoots right out into his hands. And, it was so beautiful, and it was so peaceful. And it was, because right afterwards you get to just put your baby on your chest and get in your own bed and relax. Like I didn't really think about delivering the placenta or anything like that. I spent probably a good 45 minutes just laying in the bed with the baby on my chest, and, breastfeeding and relaxing. And so we waited probably about 45 minutes before we cut the cord. And then he took the baby, and I went and got in the shower, and the placenta, toppled right out. But it was beautiful because I didn't even, like the after contraction, I don't remember any of that. It was because I was resting, and I was in my own home, and I was in my own space. And being able to just come out and get back in bed with my baby, he's doing chest to chest and eat, being able to have somebody bring me food.
Literally everything, pretty much.
Yes. My daughter was able to come in and be like, the baby looks funny. Being like, yeah, he's going to get brown soon. And they all look like the inside of the uterus for the first couple of hours as they fill out, so she's getting to see that. I cut my placenta into pieces for smoothies. So, I had a piece of placenta in a smoothie pretty much right away, which I think super helped with like just healing and, how I felt emotionally afterwards. But it was absolutely incredible. And a birth experience that I would wish for anybody who was going to have a baby. And for him, and seeing him see birth that way too was really incredible. Seeing him completely disconnect from the idea that this is a medical emergency to I delivered my baby. Like he's proud. When we would go, when we went to like get the birth certificate, they gave him a standing ovation, like he did the work.
I don't like that. And I'm sorry, I have to say it. I have to say it. He did not deliver your baby.
No.
I have to say it.
He was so excited. I caught the baby and just, like it was
amazing.
A very
My
proud...
husband caught mine too. Yeah, I love it.
Very proud moment, and for him, and a very beautiful moment for him. Which I think is like what made us being able to do a 100% free birth for this next pregnancy possible.
Yeah.
Yes, we have the same, I got all the stuff for the water birth. This time I also got some things just in case I decide to have a land birth. Because we have a lot more room now. So I'm like, I have options. I can have this baby any way I want to have this baby.
Hell yeah.
Like whatever my spirit says, I can have this baby on the edge of the bed. I can have it in the bathtub. I can have it in the birth pool. And that's cool to really be able to explore. Like there's so many different ways that I can do this. This pregnancy has been a lot about demedicalizing the process even in my head. I think that I started out and I had printed out like all these different worksheets, and I was like, I'm going to measure the baby's growth, and we've got our fetoscope, we're going to check the heart rate, we're going to keep notes and whatnot. And I did that for 2 or 3 weeks. I was like, I'm going to check my blood pressure, and I'll check my I'll do the, blood sugar testing myself. And then I got to a point where I was like, if I want to have a medical birth, I should go to the doctor.
Totally.
And let them do that. And if I don't want to have a medical birth, I want to listen to my body and listen to myself. I just want to know what to look for. I know what are the signs of, preeclampsia. I know what the signs are of gestational diabetes. And I eat really well. I'm very active, of course. I have a toddler, so I'm constantly running around. This is an opportunity for me to pay attention to my body and to just spend time being pregnant. And it's changed my whole viewpoint of pregnancy to just, I feel like I feel this baby move a lot more than any of my other babies, because that's my focus. Is like, are you moving around today? What's going on with you? How, and just being able and touching this baby and being like, okay, well, how are you feeling today? How's my body feeling today? It's not been the easiest pregnancy. I tend to I wasn't as sick with my last baby. This baby, I have been sick the entire time, which has not been fun, but it's also not been, I didn't need to go get IVs, and I didn't need to go do any of those things, because I knew a lot of different preventative things to do to just make sure that I was okay. Different ways to get my vitamins in, different, I experimented a lot with protein shakes and meal replacements and things like that when I couldn't, especially during the first trimester when I really couldn't hold much down. I rested, like this pregnancy was a lot about just like resting and letting my body send that energy towards making sure that the baby is getting what the baby needs and that I'm getting what I need, even on top of mothering my other two children, and trying to take care of my household and whatnot. But like the whole process has just been really different and, really meditative.
Beautiful. So it'll just be you and your husband and your older kiddos?
Yes, I still haven't decided what I'm going to do with my kids yet. My oldest daughter really wants to help, but I also know that I'm such an internal birther that I'm afraid that I don't want her to distract me. And my little one is one of those kids that just needs so much constant attention.
He's a toddler.
So,
yeah.
Yes. So, I've told my husband, like, oh, well, go play with him and I'll have the baby and text you guys.
Totally. I know moms who have done that, and it's super likely that they'll be sleeping, and that it'll happen at nighttime. But yeah, it's good to have contingency plans.
I hope so. He's not really a good sleeper either. And so I feel like no matter what happens.
You're like, I'm just going to give my kids Benadryl at the beginning of my labor.
That literally, I was like, oh, how about these melatonin gummies?
Yeah, exactly. Just for tonight.
Sleep tonight. So I'm not sure. I saw a video not too long ago of a lady who had a baby who looked like he was about my baby's age, who was in the birth pool with her, which I thought was super cute. We've talked about getting like a little teeny tiny pool and filling up a pool for him. That, he can get in and that he can play in when I get into the pool. I would like to try to keep him with me as much as possible and have them here if possible, but then, have my plan B, like if I can't focus, which all got to go.
Totally. I mean, whatever, because, you throw a movie on in the other room or something if
yes. Elmo and the Kindle.
Yeah, you're gonna
might come into play.
The problem is you just have to come to terms with birthing to Elmo in the background. I interviewed another woman who tried that, but the only thing they wanted to watch was SpongeBob, and she was like, "I am not birthing my baby to SpongeBob."
And then here it is. I made a playlist. I thought we could like dance and kind of sing together, especially like at the beginning as labor starts. But then I also think about my last labor was quite short, and was it was a very intense process, and I'm not sure. So, I'm really excited to see how it shakes out. I would love for them to be here, but, at the same time, I also want to make sure that I'm able to get into the zone that I need to get into. And then who knows, I'm very curious, how as a mom with a toddler, because, last time my daughter was 6, so she was old enough for me to be like, oh, go sit downstairs for a minute, or, to make her own decisions about coming in and out of the birth room. She came and would check for a little while, and then she would leave and, go back and do her own thing. I'm very curious how it'll impact, as a mom of a toddler, the intuition. Will I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I need you to go now? Will I just know? Just, like I do.
Of course you will.
Everything else.
Yeah.
And so I'm very excited about connecting to that aspect of the birth this time.
Totally. Well, we'll have to circle back after this little one's here and see how that all went for you. And I will say that obviously I talk to women all the time about their stories, and I can't think of any that haven't said that it just flows. If your little kiddos are meant to be there, they'll be awake and they'll be there. And if you're meant to go into the bathroom while Papa's, hanging out with them in the other room, or if, sometimes I feel like the energy is so big with birth that kids are like, well, you can't see my face, but kids are like, they know how to not freak out. Like they're just there and they're in awe and they're watching, and, and I'm sure you are, but I think it's always wise to talk to them about, I love the term like healthy blood or good blood, that we're going to see some good blood, and we're going to, and Mama's going to be a lion, and she's going to get really big and really wild, and she's going to act like a lion, and, to like prep them for the bigness of it. And obviously he's only 2, so who knows how much of that he'll integrate, as you're talking about it. But yeah, I think
and we do watch birth videos with him too. I think that's been one thing that's really interesting is like, he understands that there's a baby happening in a way that I didn't anticipate, especially at that age.
That's cool.
Like, I'm just like, oh, and has for a long time. I'm like, there's a baby in here. And he's like, baby, and like, will point to my stomach. And so, at first I was like, he doesn't really get it. But then he would start to see like little babies in the store and be like, baby, like, this is what's in you. This is what's happening. And so he has like a connection to this baby already. And so then I started to show him some shorter, less graphic videos, because I wanted him to hear the sounds. Because that was my main concern, was like, okay, well, when you hear me, I'm a loud birther. So when you hear me roaring, I didn't want him to panic. I didn't want him to, to get upset and be trying to figure out what's going on. And so, I'm like, here, watch these videos. And he loves the videos. Like he's like, that's the baby now. He walks up, this is kind of graphic, but he walks up and like grabs my vagina now. And it's like, the baby's coming out of it. Like, so he understands.
Hopefully he doesn't do that during your birth.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Right. No, I didn't consent to this. But he understands some aspects of it. And then I've been asking him lately, like, remember when you were in my belly? And he's not very verbal yet. So, but I feel like he's still connected enough to his birth process.
Look, this is the most
kind of relate.
Yeah, this is life. This is whether he's 20 or 40 or 2. We all come from this, and on a very realistic and biological and spiritual, way, of course they're going to be great and they're going to get it. And they're going to find their way of interacting with it, which is most likely to be that he'll probably sleep through a lot of it and maybe come, out towards the end, or maybe he'll hop in the birth tub after the baby's there. Or, I've seen so many family births where it just goes, I've always seen it go so sweetly. I really have.
Yes, I thank you for saying that, because it's very soothing, because I feel like this is the great unknown.
Of course, it would be whether you had a toddler or not.
Predictable, and right. So a lot of things about it that I'm like, this birth is going to be fine, it's going to be smooth, and and then I'm looking at him like, but you're the wild card, so
totally,
we'll see what happens with you.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. But it is, it's going to be a family birth, even if that means that Papa's in the other room with them, whatever, watching a show or taking them for a walk and you are, in the bathroom by yourself, I mean, that's okay too, if that's what winds
Yes.
up being the most helpful to you, because that's the thing you can rely on is however this goes down, you're going to organize the most helpful dynamic. And you don't have to know yet if that is having your kiddos around, having them in the tub, having them not around, having them at the park down the street if it's in the middle of the day. You're going to know what's most helpful to me. And I know you kind of said it jokingly, but it's true. You could totally just text them like, okay, come back. I mean, obviously the third option is if you had a support person who could be on call that you could be like, can you get them out of the house for a couple hours?
Yes.
A lot of people do that, of course.
Yes, and we definitely do. But one of the most attractive things for me about home birth and free birth is the way that my kids can be involved. Because, I look at my daughter who, she's getting ready to turn 9. This will be her second home birth that she's experienced. And so I think about when it's her turn to have a baby, if she decides that she wants to have babies, when it's her turn to have a baby, her viewpoint of birth is going to be completely different than I think what a lot of her peers are cultured to, where, a lot of her friends are going to be like, oh, okay, well, you're pregnant, you go to the hospital. My daughter is like, well, that's not the only option. I watched my mom have 2 babies, or however many babies I end up having, or, I've seen this happen at home. I've seen this she's seen birth from an empowered perspective versus seeing birth only from somebody else has to direct me through it. And I'm really excited about that. And the same thing for him now, as we're going through this process, really thinking about, what his experience is in terms of being able to see, birth from a place of empowerment. One of the things that was really interesting to me, particularly with dealing with my family, was that a lot of my older family was very much pro, you guys need to go to the hospital. And it was very strange to me because as African-American people who came up in the South, it was Big Mama up the street who delivered everybody's babies.
Totally.
And so, saying to them, like, well, why is it that you guys are so pro-hospital when you were delivered by somebody's auntie in your living room floor, in your bathroom, in your kitchen? Your grandma went and boiled some water up, and y'all had this whole process that you did at home. Like, why are we disconnected from that? Because you guys are fine. You guys are perfectly healthy. And the viewpoint of birth is, was always, it was this weird thing of, at a certain point, it got pushed that you go to the hospital. That's where it's safe. People don't die at the hospital. And you say, well, no, that's not true at all. And a lot of times, when a baby is born and there's problems with the baby or the mother, it has nothing to do with where the birth took place. It has to do with, other elements, other things that are going on that would have taken place whether you were at home, whether you were in the car, whether you were at the hospital. Why have we gotten away from the idea that you can have your baby at your house? And
brainwashing.
Where does that come from? Yes, very, very, very much. But, everybody wants the epidural now, and everybody wants the, it's amazing to me how many women, when I talk to them about, the ways that I give birth, and they're just like, well, I just couldn't do it. And it's like, well, why not? What is it about you that you feel like you can't? Why can't you, get through this couple of hours of transition, of bringing your baby forth? Why do you feel like you can't? And thinking about the language that we use when we talk about labor, and you're in pain, and it's awful, and, we can save you, and this, that, and other. And it's like, well, I could figure out how to endure, the feelings that come with pushing a baby out, because to me that's much better than having somebody stick a needle in my spine.
And you got to experience why a woman gets an epidural. You know, you're strapped down, being treated like shit. You've been treated your entire pregnancy like you don't know anything about what's going on. I mean, I can't believe women birth at hospitals without epidurals, with the way that the whole room is physically very intentionally set up for you to be a silent, numb, good girl on your back. I mean, the whole everything about it is high volume, and it's incredibly hard to manage a wild woman in a tiny ass room who wants to do things her own way. But what's interesting is that I birth with tons of women at home, and I almost never hear a woman talk about epidurals at home, ever. You know, it's like, it's when you're in a different model where it's not even on the table, they find powerful coping mechanisms, whether it's like you did, whether it's water, whether it's a chant, whether it's movement, whether it's a song, whether it's being silent, whether it's being alone, whatever it is. You know, those are power tools, and I can't even think of one.
And they stay with you.
Right, exactly. And they're coming from within you, of course. And so, I mean, I get it. I do have compassion for women who say, of course I need an epidural. I don't want to feel birth, because birth has been taught to me that it is the most horrific, suffering, horrible thing that could possibly happen. And so of course I want to opt out of that. But the secret, and why we have this podcast, and what you know and what I know, is that actually that's not true at all. And when you're in an environment that nurtures the truth, which is, it doesn't mean that birth is easy or that it even feels good like it does for some women, but
right, no, not at all.
Yeah, but what it means is that it's crazy powerful, and that you will walk through those gates and be a new born person, you know, that experiences.
You are born too.
Yeah, totally. So it's why we talk about this stuff, is that we have been lied, and we have been lied to, and we have amnesia. And we have, as women, have completely lost touch with our ancestry in this way. And in such a couple generations? You know,
yes.
I mean, it's like, hasn't even been that long. Most of our grandparents were born at home. Certainly our great grandparents, you know, so yeah, totally. I mean, your journey is so important, because it kind of encapsulates the whole thing, right? Like you thought that you were going to get this best of both worlds idea at the hospital with a midwife, which is super, super, not only understandable, but very common and totally untrue, right? Unfortunately.
Yes.
And then, you know, you tried to find this compromise with your partner, and, you know, thankfully he came with you and saw what you were having to fight against. And, you know, you guys made an autonomous choice to do it your way, and you had an epic birth experience. And now, you know, you're going to keep that in your family. Like, you just reclaimed birth for your ancestors, for your lineage, and for your children.
Yes, and that is the biggest thing, you know, for me about this whole process.
Hell yeah.
Is just the power of it, and the power of, like, no, I can do this. I can make these babies, and I can grow these babies, and I can, you know, I can care for them, and I can birth them. And the birth, learning to see the birth as a beautiful process as well. It has been one of the biggest breakthroughs of my life, of just reclaiming the language and reclaiming the process of birth for myself, and then seeing how that impacts the other people that I'm around and other people that I talk to about, you know, what their birth experience is going to be like. It makes me a little bit sad a lot of times when I'm talking to women about because their approach to birth is so much from a place of fear.
Oh, it's tragic.
And
it's tragic.
You know, trying to help them dismantle that without them feeling like I'm pushing, you know, that they should do what I do. Because, you know, that it might not be for you. You might not be a person who wants to free birth and whatnot, but just like encouraging women to get as educated as possible about what's happening to your body and what all of your options are, and just, you know, like there's so much more to birth than pain and fear.
Yep. In fact, it can be the complete opposite.
Absolutely, the complete opposite. I think the best advice that one of the women gave me in one of the groups is she said, when you get to the point where you feel like you maybe can't do it, that's how you know the baby's almost here. And when you get to that point, you have a choice. You can opt out and try to go get some support, or you can gather up the last little bit that you feel like you have, and you'll have a baby in your hands in no time.
Mm-hmm.
And she was absolutely right. Like right at that moment where I was like, oh my God, can I really do this? Like, boom, here's the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I talk to other women, I hear them express a very similar sentiment of like, okay, well, I got to the point where I thought I was going to call. I thought I was going to go ahead and transfer. And then they're like, no, and then I had the baby. It was great. Or they transferred and left, or transferred, had the baby in the hallway, had the baby in the car on the way, because that moment where you feel like maybe you can't do it, you've done it.
Yeah.
It's already done.
Yeah, totally. Stay home.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome to hear your story, and so powerful. And, it's just, like we said, it's just all about reclaiming it. And everyone's, that's into this is finding their own path with it. And it's just so important that we share their stories.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for, creating a space for women to even discuss rebirth. Especially in our community, it's very difficult to find safe spaces to discuss, what is rebirth and what does rebirth look like.
Mm-hmm.
And, and especially now with a lot of the statistics coming out about the Black mortality rate in childbirth and what have you, and as you're trying to have conversations and navigate with different women about, why is this happening and where is this coming from, and then you say to them, like, well, I don't go to the doctor for my babies, and they're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? And trying to expose more people to what it means to have a free birth and what it means to have an unassisted birth, or to have a home birth, a midwife birth, whatever that looks like.
And I think
interesting.
I think we need to be very clear when we talk about the infant and maternal death rates of women of color and why they're so much higher. I think our language needs to be very clear that it is, yes, women of color have 4 times as more likely chance of having horrible outcomes in the system. It's not just in childbirth. It's not just that if you put a Black and a white woman together in a home birth, that's the same, that truth is still the same. It's not. It is in the system from systemic healthcare, from the systemic racism in the healthcare model. And so it is not, and that's why women of color free birthing is those stories need to get spread more than anybody, in my opinion, because it is not that Black women are at a higher risk of a bad outcome, just like point blank.
It's the treatment.
Right.
And, it's interesting because where I am in D.C., the area where I live in D.C., they have closed all of the labor wards at all of the hospitals that are within about 20 minutes of me because of, these high rates of mortality and all of these different issues. They had a doctor who was delivering babies who was not licensed to be doing so, and like all of these different elements going on. And so, it's really interesting to be in a position to have a conversation with women who are, hey, I'm pregnant, and being like, well, you should think about alternative ways to have your baby besides entering into this system, and that it is doable and it is safe, and it is, you educate yourself, but take power back over your birth, and that we need to stop hitting the hospital and letting them dictate what birth is for us and what is normal for us and what it should look like, and start to get back into like, no, people have been having babies since forever.
Well, and especially like don't go to a model that doesn't give a shit about you. That's like really like the bottom line, and it's painful, but let's just call it what it is. Don't go somewhere where they don't care about you. Go where you are going to be cared for. And if you can't find that, then just do it yourself.
Create it.
Yeah, create
you
it.
You can create it. So I really appreciate outlets like this and opportunities like this.
Yeah, it's important. It is important to talk about. Well, thank you for sharing, and yeah, we'll have to circle back once your third little love is here.
The little one. Once the next one comes, then maybe I'll have a great story about how the 2-year-old helped.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Let him catch. Just kidding. Don't let him catch.
No.
All right, girlfriend. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
That's it for today, everyone. Join us next week for another episode of the Free Birth Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your body, your choice. Lots of love.